When you know that you are queer, but your favorite drink is beer, that's gayish. You can bottom without stopping, but you can't stand going shopping, that's gayish. Oh, gayish, you're probably gayish. Well, life's just too short for narrow stereotypes, so it's gayish. We're also gayish. It's Gayish with Mike and Kyle.
Hello, everyone in the podcast universe. This is Gayish,
the podcast that's young, dumb, and full of Mike's fun.
Oh, God. Why mine? What did I do?
What did you do? You're just fun. And we're celebrating that fact.
Oh, God. Putting the U in fun. I'm Mike Johnson.
I'm Kyle Getz.
And we're here to bridge the gap between sexuality and actuality. And today
we're going to talk about sitcoms.
But we're not going to talk about Cosby.
Nope. I don't know. I'm sure there was someone gay on there at some point, but yeah. And we're going to have some guests on that do a podcast on gay TV shows. So
yep. So Gayest Episode Ever.
So they know what's up when it comes to representation, gay representation on TV.
Yeah. But first. All right. News time.
I thought you said you had feedback to share.
Oh, that's true. Thank you for knowing what we do and when we do it. I
barely.
I appreciate you. This is an email from Wicked Spider about our hunting episode. Hey guys, I'm a huge fan of the show and usually listen while I work as a mailman in North Carolina. I have to say I grew up hunting, and yes, I'm a cis gay white man. Cis, he spelled cis, S-I-S-N-C-I-S. I'm a cis or cis gay white man in his early 30s with little to no feminine qualities. I grew up hunting, fishing, riding four-wheelers, etc. I have a couple of things to express about this episode. Kyle, eating meat and bashing hunting. I'm sorry to say it, Kyle, but eating wild deer meat is free of a ton of chemicals that you have to give animals who live in captivity. And by eating store-bought meat, you're actually doing more harm than a hunter could ever do. Like Mike said, it's okay as long as you're eating it. You are giving money to animal farms, which are more like animal prisons. I can understand the hesitation when it comes to field dressing or skinning and butchering animals, but at least that's more honorable than a slaughterhouse. Also, deer population can get out of control if we didn't. If you live in rural areas, guns aren't always just for protection against other humans. There are plenty of animals that will attack you if you invade an area they consider theirs. If you have a farm and need to defend your crops, etc., or you just want to go for a walk in the woods, mountain lions, coyotes, bears, etc., they will attack you. Not always, but I'd rather have a gun, because you aren't outrunning them. I love the show, huge fan, and you guys teach me so much. I hope I was able to change your opinion, even if just a little. Thanks, Wicked Spider.
No, that's a really good point. Like that's part of the, I totally agree. There's like a big part of the shitty part of the meat eating is the cruelty that goes, it's not just the killing of them, it's the cruelty that goes along in their entire lifetime. So that totally makes sense that like better a deer out having a great life, leaping around, having fun instead of like, trapped in a little animal prison. That still doesn't help that doesn't change the weirdness I feel about meat eating in general, but definitely agree on the like level. That's part of the thing. I like, if I was better at life, I feel like I would, if, given I am eating meat, eat from places I know treat animals ethically and everything, but that is also something I have not done.
There seems like there may be a philosophical argument that could be made that ending an animal's happy life is a bigger damage than ending its horrible suffering. Suffering that you thrust upon it in the first place because you wanted to kill it and eat it, but it's like, go with me on this one.
That's like, I don't know if you... a murder, like torturing a person, it's like you might as well just kill him because like that's nicer than just killing some rando. I don't know. Yeah. That's a really weird thing to say, Mike.
Yeah, sorry.
It's fine.
Moving on. Yeah. Time for the news.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. So news the first in... That was so like angelic. It was almost like choral in a way. Except that last part where you growled like a demon, but probably made somebody come. So like, whatever.
Whoa, okay.
Okay. So news the first.
Great.
3 teachers from a New Jersey high school are being investigated after they were caught on a Zoom chat trashing one of their gay colleagues. The incident happened last Wednesday at Dumont High School in New Jersey. And 3 teachers, seemingly unaware that they were chatting in a public forum, attacked their fellow coworker for being gay. Quote, video from gay gym teacher, one teacher wrote, delete, all caps. To which another replied, who the hell is that kid with the gay gym? Who the hell is that kid with gay gym teacher? She's so full of herself, a third remarked. Why is that kid with the gay gym teacher? The first teacher then asked. Is that her adopted kid? The second asked. Who's going to be all fucked up growing up watching 2 chicks kissing and calling them both mom? These are teachers, Kyle.
Wait, who was the kid with the gym teacher?
Don't know.
I didn't totally follow their conversation.
Yeah, don't know.
Great. So there's some picture of a kid with the gym teacher, and they assumed it was a child that's going to be fucked up because they're gay?
Yep. Yep. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens with them. There were students on the call who could see everything that their teachers were writing. It got leaked because a student took a screenshot and uploaded it to social media, where it went viral. The mayor of Dumont, Andrew LaBruno, issued a statement calling the comments, quote, disturbing and extremely appalling, and asked the school's superintendent to investigate. These homophobic comments do not reflect our community's values, nor do they represent our beliefs in the borough of Dumont. We are an inclusive and welcoming community.
What are they supposed to investigate? Like, investigate what? You can't have a screenshot. Investigation, look at screenshot. Investigation complete. Like, that always feels like what people, like, I call on an investigation feels like code for we don't want to do shit. We just want to make you feel like we're saying something's going to happen.
Yeah. There's also, like, there's a certain goodness to the presumption of innocence until due process has been.
Yeah, I mean, like, some kid could have, like, written it themselves into a screenshot, or you know how the kids like to photocopy.
Kyle, we don't want them to get defense ideas from us.
Well, it sounds like these teachers are not super tech. This is the most enjoyable thing. Like, as people of a certain age do not know how technology works, so their shitty beliefs are like, you know, there's all this. I don't know if you have it in the news, like homophobic people that like on Zoom are doing like homosexual things that like they just don't get technology. And it's kind of ruining them, and it's a lot of fun for me. Yeah,
I agree. The hoisted by their own petardness. No, that sounds like a bad word. To be hoisted by their own petard.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, that's a great segue. News the second. Joseph Shaher,
new Patreon member.
Yeah, spells Joseph all fucked up. Anyway, this person, who is a member of the European Parliament representing Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's Fidesz party, has resigned from his position in Brussels after he was caught leaving what reports described as a 25-man orgy on Friday.
This was all over my news. This is like all like, at some point I was like, I don't need to read any more about this thing no, please continue sharing.
Yeah. Well, his boss, the government that he works for, has been curtailing LGBTQ rights since he was elected prime minister in 2010. This dude, who fronted him in the European Parliament, helped rewrite Hungary's constitution, quote, to protect the institution of marriage as the union of a man and a woman. So, yeah, he's just like, he's one of the top fuckfaces in a party of fuckfaces that are actively fighting against gay rights. But then he resigned on Sunday after he admitted to breaching Belgium's strict lockdown rules to attend a sex party. The police found 25 naked men at the gathering, including him and some diplomats. This is according to Belgian newspaper Le Dernier Heure. I don't speak French. The newspaper quoted a local police.
The second way you said it was condescending that it felt French to me. So,
Le Dernier.
Yeah.
The newspaper quoted a local police source as saying, quote, "We interrupted a gangbang," which I imagine him saying it all pleased with himself.
If there was a news story of me, I would want it to be like Kyle Getz caught fleeing from a 25-man gangbang. Like that would be the way I would want to be in a newspaper. That's is there a little part of you that's like, God, that sounds fun?
Yeah. The public prosecutor's office said, quote, a passerby reported to the police that he had seen a man fleeing along the gutter. He was able to identify the man. The man's hands were bloody. It is possible that he may have been injured while fleeing. Narcotics were found in his backpack. The man was unable to produce any identity documents. He was escorted to his place of residence, where he identified himself as S.J. by means of a diplomatic passport. Yeah, he insisted that he had not taken any of the drugs, which, of course, everyone takes a backpack full of drugs to not take.
Yeah, no, I was just at the orgy with drugs to judge, watch, and stay sober. Mom.
Why is it always... Okay, do I need to vote Republican so that I can then enjoy a 25-man gangbang? Because, like, it's always these guys, right?
I think if any one of us were a closeted Republican, like, Senate member, we'd be getting so much ass. Like, that's the way to it. It'd be like, you'd hate your life and you'd be very horrible and shameful, but the sex would be so good.
Yeah. Sign me up? No, don't sign me up.
No.
Okay, great. News the last. Are you ready?
Yeah.
I feel bad because sometimes, like, I try to avoid the super duper obvious, but this time we can't avoid the super duper obvious.
Okay.
So I'm going to try very hard not to dead name him because people keep fucking it up. But Elliot Page, the Oscar-nominated star of Juno and Netflix's The Umbrella Academy, has announced that he is transgender. Quote, hi, friends. I want to share with you that I am trans. My pronouns are he, they, and my name is Elliot. I feel lucky to be writing this, to be here, to have arrived at this place in my life. I feel overwhelming gratitude for the incredible people who have supported me along this journey. I can't begin to express how remarkable it feels to finally love who I am enough to pursue my authentic self. I've been endlessly inspired by so many in the trans community. Thank you for your courage, your generosity, and ceaselessly working to make this world a more inclusive and compassionate place. I will offer whatever support I can and continue to strive for a more loving and equal society, he wrote. I love that I am trans, and I love that I am queer, and the more I hold myself close and fully embrace who I am, the more I dream, the more my heart grows, and the more I thrive. To all the trans people who deal with harassment, self-loathing, abuse, and the threat of violence every day, I see you, I love you, and I will do everything I can to change this world for the better. So yeah, Elliot Page. I can't think of a more public example of a trans person coming out, and the wholesomeness of the whole thing is really pretty exciting.
Yeah, totally. And I just think about his activism, like before this, that like lends itself, like he's been super active for like queer rights, and it is great to have someone who's already active in the community and supportive and a influential voice, you know, rather than some dipshit who doesn't know anything about anything.
Yeah. Yes, Dan.
It rubbed me the wrong way that they chose World AIDS Day to come out as trans, like any day before, day after, but like on a day when the queer community has historically focused on remembering those lost to AIDS. They sort of stole the thunder and took over the like coverage of queer stuff, and I know it felt like tone deaf. Just me.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The bigger gaffe on World AIDS Day was all of the COVID talk from the UK government.
Oh my god, yeah.
There's one, like some BBC like group was like people putting red ribbons to commemorate the COVID, like something.
Yeah.
I thought that like this is one of those things where the news coverage, I was like so worried about it. And most of the coverage I saw was the headlines, the articles did not dead name him. Some did include it in the like subheaders or in the text. And this is something where I was like really curious myself and did a lot of like philosophical thinking about like how do you do this? And I looked at the GLAAD resources for journalists, and one of the things they said is, among a lot of other tips, is it's okay to mention his dead name once, to say formerly known as this person, and then move on from that, and then not use it again. Because I think, especially in a visual medium, the news that I was seeing, like you can put an image of him and people know who you're talking about. It's a little bit harder for us. Like when you say, luckily in this case, like the lead in Juno, like you kind of know who that is. But just to like, if it were a like lesser known celebrity or something, you may have to use their dead name so that just once, so people know, we just know what we're talking about.
You don't want to dead name this person over and over again, but it might be helpful to avoid the like long and complicated. Well, did you see Juno? You know, the one that was pregnant, that was the star of the show. Nope, never saw Juno. Great. Let's see.
Umbrella Academy is the one, another one they kept mentioning, and I did do a little bit of that. Like, I like maybe because he has such a big name that I was like. Wanted to make sure I looked at several articles and finally saw his dead name just to like confirm. Like I saw the pictures and and I was just like, but is it really him? Like, I just wanted to know for sure that I was thinking of the right thing and looking at the right thing.
Well, anyway, that's the news.
Great. Speaking of news, I have news about new Patreon members.
Great.
That was chill.
Flawless segue.
I would like to thank the following Patreon members: Spencer Stone, David. What?
I don't know. I just wanted to gay gasp because it's been a while.
Great. You can get out your gay gasps here after every one, because now if you don't for everyone else, they'll feel left out. David Flisher, Samuel J. John.
What?
You're supposed to gasp. You're not supposed to give me any other lip.
I can't. I can't. If you don't give me something, I can latch my lips onto.
Samuel G. John. There we go. Joshua Stewart. And E.W. Great.
Entertainment Weekly gave us a Patreon support.
I wish. No, this is lowly old person EW. Sorry. If you want bonus content, shit to listen to, shit to watch, and to support us, go to patreon.com/Gayish podcast.
Do it.
And thanks to everyone who does support us. We appreciate you.
We appreciate you.
Sitcoms?
Sure. Let's talk about sitcoms. Okay. Well, sitcom, which is a portmanteau of situation, comedy. Sitcom. That's all.
That was your contribution?
Yep. You have fun with the guys from Gayest Episode Ever. I'm done now.
Okay. Yeah, that's good point, Mike. That is what that means.
Okay. I'm going to be pedantic and full of shit. I think people use the word sitcom to describe shows that aren't sitcoms. Like they think it merely is episodic and funny, and that's not true. It doesn't have to. It's more than just episodic and funny. And I don't think we have a lot of sitcoms anymore, not in the like truest sense of the word. And part of that's because my roommate and I have been watching The Golden Girls, and that's like quintessential situational comedy.
Yeah.
And as the more we watch it, the more I realize that we don't really have shows like that anymore. Like there are a few examples. Modern Family comes to mind. They're still on, right? For reasons I don't understand.
What? You don't like Modern Family?
I did like the first couple of seasons, but Jesus Christ. I don't know.
Like once you get past a certain point, you just kind of like get to keep rolling.
Yeah. Well, I disagree. Stop. I'm trolling for hate mail, Kyle.
Yeah, Mike hates gay representation. That's what. That's the takeaway so far.
But what do you think about the current state of sitcoms in the world?
Well, that's interesting that you ask, because I think that of the 879 series regular characters on TV programming, it's interesting that 90 were counted as LGBTQ. This is GLAAD media data.
Okay, great.
This is not sitcom specific. This is TV overall. In the last year's report, 879 series regular characters, 90 were LGBTQ, and that is 10%, which is an all-time high. Previous year it was 8.8%. So there are a record percentage of representation of LGBTQ characters, and then of course there's lots of other ways that of those, who's being represented and everything needs to improve and change. But of the thing I noted is there's one asexual character, which do you know who that is?
One asexual character.
It's Todd on Bojack Horseman. I thought you might have known that right away. Todd is the only asexual character that was that they saw in last year's count.
Seems okay.
What?
They must require then like explicit declaration of that person's sexuality in order to be counted, right? Like,
I would assume so, because I mean, who do you have in mind?
I don't have anybody in mind specifically, but I was going through like one of the thoughts that I had as you were describing this was like, well, there are lots of characters that don't have sex and don't say who they want to have sex with, or if they don't want to have sex at all, like it never comes out of their mouth. But that does not an asexual character make likely in this analysis.
Yeah, nor does it. I think like just watching a character not have sex does not make you you feel represented. That's not like, oh, cool. Like, representation, real representation is like knowing about their identity and it being accepted and okay and everything.
Yeah. Otherwise people could just check out my OnlyFans.
Was you not having sex?
I don't have sex on there all the time. It's great.
Oh my God. You should start the asexual OnlyFans, and it's just videos of people hanging out and not having sex. So there's actually something that Clark's 4 stages of representation, which Clark originally created this model for representation of racial minorities, but a lot of academic papers used it for others, including LGBTQ representation. The 4 stages of representation are non-representation, ridicule, regulation, and respect. So non-representation, just not there. The ridicule, they are just there for a joke, which is often what gay people are there for.
Is that just a smarter version of that whole thing that I don't think is actually Gandhi, but people say it was Gandhi about like first they ignore us, then they make fun of us, then they hate us, then we win?
Except the hate is completely opposite, but actually very close. Because the third step is regulation, and that's where they are only represented in socially acceptable roles. The black person is a judge. Like, it's just like...
Well, pretend what I said was really smart.
Well, it was close. It was close. It was close.
Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, I'll give you like a B, B plus. And then respect. The 4th stage is you show the full breadth of a character. They have good and bad qualities. You might see them actually have a romantic relationship. You might see them
show breadths on TV.
Showtime. Yeah, and I think that it can be misleading to especially for straight people. Like, oh, there are tons of gay characters, but it's like, well, how many are just like even think like being represented, but being just a judge or the like a good like no personality, no character, just like it's like they're trying to do the right thing by showing people, but they're trying to go too far and showing them as perfect, and in order to not buy into the stereotypes. But that's like, but that's not real. That doesn't actually show a true character.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting that there are already kind of ways of thinking about and discussing this that people use in their research papers and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. How important were sitcoms to you growing up? How much do you think they affected you or played a role in your gay experience?
Well, that's a good question.
Thank you.
I mean, I think that my family, I grew up in an era where you had one family TV, and you
Yeah.
had 4 channels, one of which was PBS and stupid. I loved PBS, but like you didn't have a lot of options, and the options you did had you consumed as a family. And I think that we tended as a family to gravitate towards situational comedies, which were very much having their sort of renaissance in the 80s. But so we watched Cheers, and we watched I like to joke that Golden Girls is the only reason that I had a relationship with my grandmother. Watching that with her. But when I picture that, like, hey, the family gathers around the tube and watches something, it's usually a sitcom that I like have. Like, that's the memory. That's the feel of it.
Yeah.
We watched a lot of Roseanne as a family. Anyway, I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, no, it's similar to me. I did have a TV in my room eventually, but yeah, it was like every Sunday we got to, like, my family ordered pizza and watched The Simpsons, and then Home Improvement was usually on right after it. So like that, it was funny because even before I was gay, when I was like talking to friends, like some of my friends were not allowed to watch The Simpsons. So I was like the weird kid who was like, well, my family sits down and watches it together. Like that was weird for people, like, you know, so Christian that everyone around me, that like that was a weird thing. But
God,
yeah,
what was the Christian what was the Christian complaint to The Simpsons?
Oh, everything.
Really?
Oh my God. Yeah. It was like everything about it. It's like cursing and Bart talking back, and like everything about it was bad. There was crude humor. There was like, yeah.
Interesting.
There was pretty much everything. Simpsons was like almost the example of like the type of show that Christians were against, at least in my mind, because of how, like, you know, crude and potty mouth and bad things they did.
Simpsons is in the same category as like Seinfeld for me, of like people are really into it, super famous and popular, but I just don't care.
Oh, I stopped caring after, like, as I got older, but I remember, yeah, that was like a big part of my childhood. Yeah,
it counts for a lot. It counts for a lot.
Yeah. And I often think about sitcoms as shaping. I feel like I've had to think a little bit about the gay aspect to them, but mostly when I think about how sitcoms shape me, it's their representation of men and the way men act and behave. And I often think Home Improvement is the perfect example of the dad in the family is always portrayed as stupid, unemotional, doesn't have too many feelings, likes to fix things, like it doesn't care about his kids.
Fix things in a shitty way that like doesn't actually work, so that you have to call in the professional plumber later to fix his mistake because he was too afraid to ask for help because of toxic masculinity.
Yeah. So like all like there are plenty of other sitcoms. I think so many sitcoms, especially in the 90s, like did this, but I just hate the way men are represented. And it's interesting because even when I watched the show or the movie Inside Out, did you see that movie?
I haven't seen it, and I know that I need to.
It was really good.
But everybody says it's going to make me cry, and I don't want to do that right now because COVID.
Oh, yeah. I cried a couple times. But even in that, it was like really awesome, really great representation of, female child who is playing hockey. So not doing like the stereotypical thing and like going through the full range of emotions. Even in that, when they like zoomed in, there's the mom and dad, and like there's a moment where they zoom into the mom's head and show her feelings and the dad's head, and all of his like little feeling guys were sports. It was like sports, like that's all that like. And for a movie that was so progressive in many ways, to have the father still have that kind of stereotypical take, it was just that part was really frustrating to me. So I think that view of masculinity has stuck with me and needs to change, and has affected, because I always say like I do not fit with the traditional masculine qualities of like unemotional, unavailable, like those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, so you want to talk to some experts about sitcoms and TV and all that shit?
Yeah, let's do it.
So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have Drew Mackie and Glen Lakin from Gayest Episode Ever, and they're going to tell us why we're dumb.
Great. Can't wait.
Should we take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break.
This episode's sponsored by Palmolive.
It's good. It's good for you, and it's good for your wife.
And put it on her hands. Break.
This is the part where Mike and Kyle take a break.
So are we back?
We're back.
We're back.
For the very first time for some of us.
Back again.
Back again for the first time. We're here with Drew and Glenn from the Gayest Episode Ever podcast. Thank you both for being on.
Thank you for having us.
We are talking sitcoms, and that's what you do on your podcast is talk about the gay shit in sitcoms. But just to start us off, I'm curious to hear about why sitcoms were important enough and big enough of a topic for you to start a podcast on.
I was trying to think about what actually was the inspiration for doing this, aside from the fact that I had an existing podcast that I did not like and did not want to do anymore. And Glenn and I Glenn and I are roommates, and we were just talking about TV all the time anyway. I think what actually kickstarted it was us talking about how Frasier is like low-key the gayest show of all time, but it's not gay in a way that like casual viewers might even notice. I think it was that. Was that it?
Yeah, it was definitely Frasier versus Niles and which one is gayer and gay in what ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we necessarily thought that like, oh, wow, this is interesting. Other people should listen to us talk about it. But it's spun from there.
But then we did make that decision.
Yeah.
But also we got most of our social cues and most of our learning how to be a person, or most of our idea of what being a normal grown-up was like, came through sitcoms that we watched in the late 80s, early 90s, for better and for worse. So,
yeah, I mean, my personality was definitely forged from sitcoms, and I even was reminded of that watching an episode of Will and Grace, not by choice. In that, like, I think a lot of gay men just have a tendency to say either a funny or shitty thing, like, without expecting anyone to react to it, almost that we're just commenting on our own lives. And I think that's from sitcoms. Like, that's where that sort of quirk comes from.
yeah, I think so too.
Like gay characters that are meant to be the humor, and they do that by like shitting on someone.
Or even just like all the clever women that we gravitate towards. Like, those were our role models, and I think we emulate our behavior in scenes with multiple characters or multiple real people. I think that's how we try and provide our value. So maybe that's where we started a podcast, to sort of trace the roots of our own shitty personalities.
That's it.
So before we get too far away from it, I want to talk about Frasier. And first of all, based in Seattle, and they fuck all kinds of things up, and it is like any good Seattleite bitching about Frasier is like a rite of passage for us. But
oh my God, is Frasier the Grey's Anatomy of your? I bitch about Grey's Anatomy and how they fuck things up, but I never watched Frasier.
Never watched Frasier.
You should.
No, it was always too. It was exactly what it was supposed to be. It was always too like stuffy and dry, and I like didn't understand anything. So like when I was a kid, I was just like, I watched The Simpsons, so that was more interesting.
So Simpsons is both of our most foundational show, and Frasier does seem stuffy, but it actually isn't.
No, it's silly. It's like silly in the French way. So it's sophisticated silly.
Sometimes.
It's silly. So Frasier and Niles, you talk about them being gay characters, which I think both characters are explicitly heterosexual in the show. Can you talk more about what you mean?
So Frasier and Niles have a dad who's an ex-cop. His name is Martin, played by a gay man. As most of the heterosexual men on Frasier are played by gay men, which ups the gay factor quite a bit. But Martin does not relate to his sons because his sons like the fancier side of life. They like opera and sherry and
their mother.
Yeah. And they don't connect with their dad at all. And the pilot of the show is not the pilot. Martin's already living with Frasier in the pilot, right?
No, he moves in, I believe.
Okay, so Martin has to move in with his adult son who he has nothing in common with. And a lot of the show is the culture clash between typical man's man American type and this guy who's like very left coast and fancy and he's an intellectual. He's not like someone who exists in like the world that like a cop would have existed in. And there's a lot about that speaks to the relationship many gay men have with their heterosexual fathers, because like we're inclined towards stuff that typical men often aren't, especially men who are old enough to be our dads.
I know, my explanation is simpler. There's two soft boys, and they're just coded as queer characters because of the way they dress and react to the world, and their interest are deemed not manly.
Huh. It's interesting, like thinking about explicitly gay characters when you're trying to pinpoint gay characters, how that shaped like what we see in the media and everything. It makes me think that someone who is coded gay but is outwardly heterosexual could give a better depth of like a deep complex analysis of a relationship like that, better than like any show with a gay character at that time wouldn't have gone into that level of depth of their relationship with their dad, or that level of complexity with their dad. So it's interesting that could have been a better representation for gay kids than actual gay characters.
Well, even Niall's heterosexual relationship with Daphne and his many seasons crush on her is closer to how gay men experience love in the late 80s and 90s. And, before that, where it's sort of a forbidden love from afar, and you don't want to express that emotion or attraction because you think it'll backfire on you. And Niall's just trapped in this loveless relationship with a woman that he was just sort of pressured into being in and staying in, rather than being with the person that he wanted to be with.
I think it's super interesting that you're sort of implying that there's a classism to being coded as gay. That like
Definitely.
being uppity or upwardly mobile is a gay thing, which we also see in Will and Grace, which we're going to talk about a Will and Grace episode on your guys' show.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still true today? Like, do we see today that being gay and being rich or upper class is still tied together?
I actually think we see a lot more like slumming it gays. Like the characterization of gay characters is now that we can make things quote unquote fabulous, like by just experiencing life in a way that people with money don't necessarily. I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking of that Greg Araki show that we were watching, Apocalypse or Now Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just an example of characters who could exist in maybe an upper class world while being lower class, or not at least making money.
I feel like we are starting to get away from the idea that all gays are upwardly mobile and uppity. But I mean, like, did you sorry, can't talk. Did you guys grow up in Seattle, or did you move there?
I moved here, so I grew up in Houston.
I grew up in rural Eastern Washington, which is very, very conservative. It's Trump country out there.
I grew up in Central California in a little town that we grow apricots and hay. So, and now I'm in Los Angeles. Glen actually grew up in Chicago.
Well, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago.
So there is that tendency for gay men to migrate towards population centers, because that's just where more gay men are, and you're less likely to get beaten up for it. But the thing with gay characters on TV back in the day is that they are often what Glenn and I call angel gays, where they were trying to make them so perfect that the audience would sympathize with them, because they were kind of presuming that like half the audience hated gay people, and they'd have to win the audience over into liking them. So they are handsome, polite, good at everything. And if they're not actually rich, they look like they're well dressed enough to be rich. And that is something that's a vestige of the time. Now most people are comfortable enough with gay people. You can get more layered perceptions of gay people. And that's why you get someone like, did you guys watch Happy Endings?
No.
So there's this character played by Adam Pally on that named Max, and he's a slob. He's a mess. Like, he's physically a mess. His apartment is not as nice as the other characters on the show. And he's also a vestige of like, can you believe this gay guy is like not tidy and feminine at all? But like, we're just now getting to the point where you can have gays who are D class A. Like they're not. They don't want to be fancy.
Yeah, when you have the luxury of having more than one character every few months who happens to be gay, you can have a greater range of gay representation. So we're allowed to have like shitty gay characters and messy gay characters and just complete disasters because they are not carrying the weight of representation.
Yeah. I'm watching Pretty Little Liars right now. I never watched it when it was on. And one of the characters who is just in the first season coming out as gay, it seems so clear to me that the writers are trying so hard for all the main characters to be totally cool with it that they're going way overboard. Like whenever the other main characters like see her with her girlfriend, they're always like looking fondly and smiling. It's like they don't do that with any other person dating anyone, but like anytime it's them two, they're all smiling and looking each other and happy and like so happy for her. And it's just like a little bit over the top. I don't know if anyone else would notice it, but it's just very over the top trying to be supportive of her that, yeah, it just feels inauthentic. And I think, what you're talking about is now we can have like, I don't need everyone to be smiling at the gay character saying you're great, we all support you. Like that's not real, and that doesn't feel real to me.
Yeah, it's much more likely for your friends to be like, you're kind of an asshole, or like clean yourself up, you fucking slob. That would be more normal.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Frasier. What other shows in The Simpsons, what other shows are like foundational to your like sitcom experience? What did you grow up watching?
I think everyone would say Golden Girls. Most gay men of a certain age just grew up with those four friends, and we've modeled our personalities after them in a lot of way, and then that translates to Sex and the City, and I think, of course, in modern gay groups there are plenty of Blanches, plenty of sluts, and so there are characteristics shared between people, but I just think most people just treat that as a cornerstone.
That and the fact that it was characters who you wouldn't normally presume to have a sex life talking about their sex life a lot. And it was nonetheless something that, like, as kids, we watched it with our parents. And it's weird to think about, like, entire families sitting down to watch these four old ladies talk about, like, getting railed in Miami. But, like, that is something America did. And they did a lot for changing the way people could talk about sex. And some of the best scripts of that show were written by gay men, and they are a chosen family because aside from Dorothy and Sophia, who are mother and daughter, they are people who live together and they function as a family, but they're not related. And that, again, is something a lot of gay men end up doing when they go out in life and are separated from their biological families, but they have these like core groups that you fill roles in. Like Glenn said, someone's a Dorothy, someone's a Rose.
Which one are you?
Yeah.
We're both Dorothy's. Yeah.
So you're cranky? Is that what you're saying?
I'm absolutely very, very cranky.
And exhausted and
tall.
Yeah. Love the bitch. Yeah.
Exhausted and tall. That's very
well, because it takes so many more calories to keep me going.
It's interesting talking about I remember watching Golden Girls here and there growing up, but I've like actually rewatched or watched the full series only recently, and so much of it held up so well, and that's compared to like one of the first sitcoms I remember being into myself was Friends. When I rewatch that, that only works to rewatch it because I watched it at the time. Like if I was watching that now, like they have a lot of horrible homophobic and transphobic jokes. And it's so interesting comparing those two because Friends is more like that came out later than Golden Girls. So I'm curious, like, I know since you talk about the gay episodes of all these sitcoms, I struggle with when you look back at gay episodes or representation, because sometimes it's like, oh, well, at least there was a gay character there, even if it's a shitty representation. So I'm curious how you like look back at shows and kind of view them through a modern lens.
There's a couple of things. Like we tend to try and give credit when their heart is in the right place. And you can tell that some of them are just examples of their times and they'll use the wrong terminology, and they'll just be playing off of stereotypes that were just accepted at the time. Yeah. But if you can trace it to the root of the story and the character, and if they're trying to give the gay character some sort of agenda, and allow them to be an actual character and not just a stand-in, then we'll cut the show some slack. But if the gay character is just there to be the butt of some shitty jokes, then that's a little harder to let slide.
Yeah.
One thing with Friends in particular, this is something that almost all of the NBC sitcoms of the 90s had a problem with, like especially NBC. I don't know why, but their big fault is they don't have gay characters. They have straight characters, and they mine so much humor out of gay panic, where the idea of being mistaken for gay or seeming gay is so alarming to them, and the audience just fucking eats it up. And kind of can't forgive that, because a lot of kids our age and younger would have grown up watching that, and it really fucks you up. Like, we're going to talk about this when we talk about Will and Grace, because there's a lot of toxic messages in the episode that we watch. But it's really bad for kids to see in no uncertain terms that being gay is bad, and how hilarious it is to see someone flail when they get mistaken for being gay. And it's not that funny. It's not that funny now. It's weird to watch now. And that's just like so much of NBC in the 90s.
Especially if you're not out yet. Like, you know, I was a teenager in the 90s. I wasn't out, and I was terrified that all my straight friends behind my back were like making fun of me for seeming gay. And to see these characters on sitcoms like actually panicking about seeming gay just sort of reinforced all my fears about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that never had like a big T trauma, kind of like I never got like beat up for being gay, and so I always question, like, why is it that I have internalized homophobia? Like, and it's like, I don't deserve to have that. I never, but then I'd like look back at some things like watching Friends, which I did. And you're talking about like, there are so many messages every single day that I don't necessarily pinpoint one single thing, but like, yeah, that watching that show certainly taught me the message that like, it would be scary to be gay, and any kind of implication of which like, could be horrifying and ruin you.
Right. And also that lesbians are like always vaguely villainish for no real reason other than the fact that one of them is no longer married to Ross.
Yeah.
No one wants to be married to Ross.
for too long, at least.
No.
Although the episode where Ross and Joey took a nap together was like, turned me on in a way that like, clearly I didn't have many outlets for my sexuality, because that I was like, two boys napped together and they liked it.
I want to rewatch it now.
I actually don't remember that episode because I stopped watching Friends when I went to college. And when we go back and I have to watch episodes that I am seeing for the first time, it is a very surreal experience to be like, oh, this is something that like millions of people watched back in the day and still hold very dear to their heart.
They still watch it.
They still,
it's the most popular show on Netflix, or was when it first popped up there.
So what shows do you think do it well? You mentioned Golden Girls, but what other shows did it well?
Cheers. There is a gay episode in the first season of Cheers, and I think that was my reason for doing our show. Sam, the bartender, has an old baseball friend who's coming out, and he sort of chooses Sam's bar to have that message, and Sam has to choose to embrace him or not. And by embracing his old friend, people panic that Cheers is going to be seen as a gay bar. And you know, this is like in 1982 or 83, and the first season of the show, and they go out on a limb to sort of treat the topic and gay people seriously and as actual humans, and they give the main character of the show a chance to make a moral choice about the topic of homosexuality. And it was just so shocking to me that early on in the show's run and in the 80s, they were willing to do that.
And also at the end of the episode, Shelley Long, who is like our patron saint, we love Shelley Long a lot. Her character says that, you know, there's actually gay men in the bar right now. So if you guys are freaking out that this is going to turn into a gay bar, you didn't even notice the gay guys who are already here. And the like regulars all pick out these three guys who are like, they have mustaches, and
one has a leather vest, I think.
Yeah. One orders a light beer and they're like, oh, those are the gay guys. And it turns out that no, they're not. One of them actually asked Diane for a number. The gay guys who've been there the entire time are these two schlubby guys in the back who you just thought was like a schlubby Cheers regular. You wouldn't have ever thought he was gay, which is very progressive for back then. And it's also schlubby gays on TV is something we should see more of. And we're just kind of now getting there. So it's kind of crazy that happened.
That sounds like a sitcom in and of itself. Schlubby Gays. Like,
I
that
know,
could
it
be
was-
the name of the show.
In my head, I was like, what would that be? But I don't actually want to write it.
Like a Golden Girls where it's just four sloppy gay men living together. Yeah, that'd be great. I want to give a shout out to the Simpsons episode, Homer's Phobia, the one with John Waters. Are you guys familiar with that episode?
That doesn't sound familiar, but maybe if you keep talking.
So they make friends with this guy who owns like an antique store at the mall, and he is voiced by John Waters, and he looks like John Waters, and he's basically like an old nerd who just like loves like retro toys and stuff. And when Homer realizes that this man they've had in their house is a gay man, he freaks out and tries to teach Bart how to be straight and like prevent him from being gay. There's an elaborate sequence where they go to a steel mill to watch real men working, but then it turns out to be a gay dance club called the Anvil.
Great.
It's really good because John, the character who's gay, does eventually prove to Homer that he's not a bad guy, and Homer accepts him. But there's this very poignant part at the end where John says, now just every other gay man in the universe is going to have to save your life too, and then you'll be okay with all of them. And illustrates this very good point of it shouldn't be gay people's responsibility to prove to you that they're worthwhile people. Yeah. You should just presume that they are until they prove that they're not. It's actually kind of fucked up if you're making an exception for like, oh, you're the one good gay guy. I like you. Everyone else hasn't proven themselves to me yet. And that's actually how a lot of, maybe less so now, but a lot of straight people maybe 20 years ago thought about gay people. Like there was exceptions where they were normal, but the rest of them were all presumably bad.
I think you're being really kind. Back home where I grew up, like that is how it is now. And not just with gay people, but I think with race even more. Like they're one of the good ones is a way that people get to preserve their bigotry while still, allowing this person that has proven their stereotypes wrong into their life. And
and also just framing gay acceptance as needing to prove our worth to a straight person before we're worthwhile to the world. When really, like, don't have to prove ourselves to anyone.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks that it is true that like acceptance, one of the biggest factors in acceptance of LGBT people is knowing an LGBT person. And so while that's helpful for people to come out and people to know LGBT people, yeah, you're right. It also sucks that they have to meet someone to be like, oh, you're not as scary as I thought you were. Well, that's cool. Like, yeah, it shouldn't have to be that way. What about when you were growing up, I think we'll dip into like maybe a little bit of what we'll talk more about on your show with the Will and Grace, but like what growing up did you remember thinking about gay people, or what did sitcoms teach you about being gay?
I think for me, there was a huge overlap with seeming gay on TV and the nerd characters. So like Mark, the youngest foster son from Step by Step, was coded as gay for me because he was slight, he was bullied, and his interest in girls seemed forced. And so for me, TV sort of taught me that gay characters were in a constant state of fright and not being accepted by more masculine characters on the show. And that, I don't know, I would have to like beef up or show more interest in sports, like throw a ball with my dad and be able to catch it without like flinching, just to get by and just to get the eyes off me. And so it felt like gay characters were always under more of a microscope than some of the other characters.
I mean, again, we're going to talk about it with Will and Grace, but Will and Grace was a very difficult show for me because the image of gay men they put forth, I'm like, I don't think I have that in me. And it kind of took me until like my 30s to accept that like that's not who a gay man has to be. And I'm not failing if I'm not matching that. What about you guys?
Well, I remember the first time I saw Will and Grace was at a friend's house, my best friend, who was a girl in high school. And it was like this terrifying moment where it was like, part of it was good because like I was always scared of anyone's dad. I just always thought someone's dad was, I don't know, I was better friends with the mom. I had more to relate to and could talk about with their mom. But like with the dad, like I was always worried about them, and he like my friend's dad was like watching Will and Grace and laughing, and I was like, well, first of all, I didn't know there was a show with gay people on it, so that's really interesting. And then the fact that he was like sitting there laughing at it, I was like a bit of a relief, but then it was also really nerve-wracking to sit there on the couch watching it with them, because like this is really cool, but like what if I seem too interested in this, or what if I don't know, it like I had to like really think about how do I react to this show in a way that a straight high schooler would, like what am I supposed to do? So it was like very, very weird mixture of like exciting and terrifying to see that on TV.
I think it's a very common reaction. I always, when I think about having to sit there and be like, how would a straight person react to this? And then fucking overthink it and like not get it right. I become jealous of the fact that straight people don't ever have to think about it. Like they just don't have that stress of being like, how am I supposed to do this? What is the way that is okay for me to do this?
Yeah. There was an episode of Third Rock from the Sun with a gay character, and he had my name. And I remember this visibly sweating because there was a gay character with my name. And I would like look to my dad to see if he was like watching me react. And I was just terrified. And I had to keep excusing myself to go to the bathroom anytime that character showed up in a scene.
Yeah.
I remember, this is not a sitcom, I remember watching, I think it was Shrek 2, that there is this prince who was, I don't know if he was super gay, but like he had a sparkly shirt on and he danced and he did like, and like every, like when a gay prince named Kyle all of a sudden came on the screen, all of my friends looked at me. And then of course, given he was like all prancy and glittery, I was like, oh shit, like that was the worst thing to come on the screen in front of my friends. And I didn't, and luckily it was in a dark theater where I didn't have to do too much. They
couldn't see you turning red or anything. Yeah, that's a fucked up thing that like, even once you realize you're gay, you can't appreciate gay representation, because if you're watching it with people who don't know you're gay, it becomes this whole fucking, it's really weird.
Yeah. What about nowadays? Like, what are your favorite sitcoms that you think have good, or any TV shows, good representation of gay people?
I would again vouch for Happy Endings, which has been off the air. It's only 3 seasons, and it went off the air maybe 7 or 8 years ago. But they have more than one gay character, and it is great to see a gay guy whose life is a mess, because it's relatable.
We've burned through so much TV in quarantine that it all bleeds together.
I get that.
Like, we just talked about the new Saved by the Bell, and I just want to say, like, oh, that's great gay representation, but there's no gay character on the show.
No.
Huh.
But it just feels like a very progressive show. So it's like, oh yeah, we're represented, but it's like, oh, well, maybe not.
There's a new Saved by the Bell?
Yeah. It's good.
It's funny in the way the original is not, and it's on the Peacock streaming app, and we were big fans. Something good it does is that I mentioned angel gays and how like gay characters had to be perfect in order to win over audiences. Yeah. The problem we're having more recently is angel trans characters, where they have to be like attractive and nice and good at everything and strong and confident, and they're just not that interesting. We've done a few trans episodes with trans guests who've like talked about this weird phenomena, but on the new Saved by the Bell, there is a trans actress named Josie Toda who I knew was trans going into watching the first episode of the show, and I was thinking like, I wonder if this character is going to be trans or not, and then they very casually dropped that she transitioned, and it's not a major part of the show for her. And her arc is more about being a queen bee mean girl and trying to reconcile with what that means for her. And it is, as a cisgender person, it is to me a very interesting take on a trans character, because they made it part of her, but not the whole of her. And then they found a way to make her interesting aside from being just trans.
Yeah, that's what I think we don't see enough of, like, oh, you're gay, but also you do other shit. And like we talked about, I think you're right, that like seeing gays that are not like all put together, that are either like shitty people or don't have their life together or a mess, but also like gays that their whole thing is not there to be gay. It's to do other things outside of that. I think those are that's the kind of representation that is actually useful.
But the most important question about that show is whether Mario Lopez has been shirtless yet or not. Because I haven't watched it, but I need to know. Oh,
he's shirtless a lot. Does not show his butt like he did on Nip Tuck.
Yeah. Man, that like 30 seconds. I've seen that 30 seconds of nip tuck many times.
It's a very good scene.
I do wonder if the first incarnation of Saved by the Bell, I'm not sure if you would consider that sitcom or not. One thing that we haven't talked about is like, what does sitcom mean, like definition wise? But the original Saved by the Bell, how could the character of Slater not have been like targeted at queer kids, gay kids? Like there's so much about his body and about like objectifying him.
Yeah.
And
Wrestler?
it just seems, in retrospect, it all seems just so geared to get gay kids to watch or something.
I mean, so it dropped on our Patreon feed last week, but the episode that's going live for us this next coming week is a Saved by the Bell episode where we talk about the new show, but we also talk about Saved by the Bell, the original version. And like we talk a lot about how weird it is that like they spend more time focusing on Mario Lopez's body than they do on any of the girls, which is weird. Like you have 3 attractive girls and they get objectified to an extent, but like they went off the rails with Mario Lopez, and there's just someone should write a paper on that. It's fascinating and complicated.
Well, and also these characters like Slater and Zach were the source of my body dysmorphia, going from like being a child to a teenager. Is like, well, why is my body not shaping up like that? Why is my hair not flopping like that? And so that's another source of sort of gay panic in these sitcoms, is that the actors are so attractive. And, you want to look like them, but also sleep with them, which is such a unique problem for gay people.
Yeah.
Where like we want to look like the people we want to sleep with sometimes. And that just brings up a lot of issues.
Yeah. Although, Mike, I'm wondering, like, you're talking about them being there, are they there to attract gay kids? I mean, part of it I would think is like just the goal is to have attractive actors, like not targeting anyone specific. That's just, you just always have attractive actors. So what would make, is that different than, are there certain types of attractive that they put there to attract gay kids? Or is it just a byproduct of having an attractive dude?
It just, like, Mark Paul Gosselaar is attractive and he's hot, and they went with that. But like, it's a different level with AC Slater, with Mario Lopez's character. Like, that's so homoerotic and so overtly sexualized in a way that, like, I don't think, at least at the time, is something that would have been targeted towards teenage girls. Like, it felt like at this new level that just felt overtly gay to me.
Singlets. I don't think that many girls are like, I'm going to fantasize about a cute boy in a singlet, but like every gay boy was doing that and still does that. And he spends a lot of time in singlets on that show.
Yeah.
Thank God.
You mentioned that like is Saved by the Bell a sitcom, and that's another thing we talk about because I actually kind of related to Will and Grace. Will and Grace is a show that I have. The humor doesn't work for me, so both of them are things that work like a sitcom, where it has a sitcom style plot and a studio audience that's laughing to stuff, but like the stuff they're laughing at isn't funny. So if it's not making you laugh, you're like, wait, is this a sitcom? I guess it is, but it's just one that where if you don't find anything funny, you're completely lost. It's very
just
strange.
a sit.
Yeah. Sit and watch.
I mean, it was a sitcom, but it was a sitcom geared towards children in a way that like Full House was kind of like softer, and so not necessarily funny to adults, but something that kids can watch and feel like it is adult entertainment, because it's like it has the trappings of sitcoms that their parents watch with the laugh track and the ABC plots, and it just feels comfortable, and it's sort of, I don't know, it's something that's not cartoons, but it has the safety of cartoons.
So I'm a little bit putting you on the spot here, I think, and we've named a lot of shows. I'm wondering if you have any predictions for 20 years from now, what shows we'll still be talking.
I mean, I think people are going to talk about Golden Girls until we die.
Do you mean shows that are on now, or shows that like we're considering classic now that will still have value in 2 decades?
Yeah, I mean, I think both. I think the second one is more where I was coming from, but the first is good too.
I mean, 10 years ago, I would have said that one of the most important shows for gay representation is Roseanne. And that's not a show people really talk about anymore. And it's kind of crazy to imagine that went from being such a center point of 90s culture and 90s sitcom culture to something that is kind of an afterthought now, just because of Roseanne herself saying a lot of crazy stuff. But it is crazy. So stuff that seems very contemporary does fall away.
I mean, I think the root of that problem is that, you know, the classic shows that we talk about from the 90s and before, that's when there were 3 or 4 major networks, and you had ratings that were in like 30 million viewers, 40 million viewers, and there was just a shared culture between kids and adults that you just don't have right now. Even though, like, you know, with the internet, everyone's more connected and talking, we're not all watching the same things necessarily. And also, like, we're not forced to watch them 10 times over because we don't have to watch reruns. We don't just turn the TV on and have whatever is playing in the background just ingrained in our DNA. And so modern shows do have a harder time digging in, and they may not last 20 years from now. We may not be thinking about Superstore 20 years from now, even if it is.
Is anyone thinking about Superstore now?
There are people, and we did watch an episode, and it was a good episode, but it's not something that I get into. Right. It's just not mine. If I want to watch a sitcom, I want to watch like a comfort sitcom, and newer sitcoms have more modern sensibilities with short scenes and a lot of characters, and it's just not comfortable in the same way classic sitcoms are, because I feel like a short play. You know, the scenes are longer. You're sort of in it with the characters. There's not that divide of like good cinematography. Like, I want shitty cinematography and I want long scenes.
I'm still trying to think of what from back in the day is going to last. Like with Friends, I wonder if all those issues are going to spoil it, and in 20 years it's going to be regarded as something that is like kind of offensive and stupid, which is how I consider it now, kind of. But I'm really having a hard time pinpointing anything that I can say for sure will be of cultural value in 20 years other than The Simpsons, just because The Simpsons wins just by pure longevity and reflecting the American culture for since like 1989.
I feel good saying Golden Girls and Frasier. I'll put money on those two.
I Love Lucy has been one that like has staying power even this long, that like I think people at least know of, regardless of their age, and know she was up to some hijinks just because of the nature of a female lead and, you know, a lot of the newer things they did. I think that's going to continue.
Yeah, I did a Lucy rewatch early in quarantine that I had forgotten about completely until you mentioned it. And it does hold up. It's still funny. She's a comedic genius.
Although rewatching it, there were so many things that was like, you know, Lucy was gone, and so like Ricky was like, I don't know how to make food. Like, yeah. I guess I'll go buy a sandwich and bread or something. Or like the women, like, you go talk over there, and the men are going to go talk over here. Like, there's so many things that I was like, oh shit, like, like we're not even on to like gay anything yet. We're on like just, you know, male and female, like, weird dynamics there.
The gender politics are terrible. They're a disaster. They're a minefield. But if you can overlook that.
By the way, I Love Lucy may actually have the first gay joke in American sitcom history. Maybe sitcom history in general.
What was it?
So we did it early. We did it in quarantine, so it seems like we did it 5 years ago. But it is... Lucy thinks Ricky's trying to murder her. That is the setup for the plot. And one of the pieces of that one, she finds a list of what she thinks is like mistresses that will replace her, and she's reading off the names. And the last one is Theodore, and it ends on an ad break. She looks at the camera and goes, "Theodore," and it's a gay joke. She's horrified that Ricky might be in a relationship with a man. It does not come up again, and it also turns out that all these names belong to dogs that are going to be in part of Ricky. It's a zany misunderstanding, but that's it. That's as far as we can tell, is the first gay joke in TV.
Huh.
That's awesome.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Especially gays love Lucy.
Yeah. Queen of Palm Springs.
I also just realized another reason that shows like I Love Lucy will not fall from grace the way Roseanne did is that they're all dead and they can't say anything to get canceled at this point. Yeah. So they have that. They have being dead going in their favor.
they can't fuck shit up as much as alive people can.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. Actually,
Oh.
So did we do it?
yeah, we did it.
All of the comms have been sat.
Yes, we've sat on everything.
Okay, great. So, do you want to watch one while we take a break?
Yeah, sure. Let's watch some I Love Lucy.
Let's take a break.
Let's take a break.
Break.
This is the part where Mike and Kyle take a break.
Then are we back?
Yeah, we're back.
We're back.
We are going to do our Gayest and Straightest.
We're going to do our Gayest and Straightest, but first, Drew and Glenn from Gayest Episode Ever. Where can people find out about you, your show, what you're up to, your lives, etc.?
GayestEpisodeEver.com is very easy to remember. You can find all of our episodes there. We've done most of the popular American sitcoms ever. So if we haven't done a show you like, then you probably have issues with TV. We did a lot this year. Please go through our back catalog. You can follow us on Twitter at Gayest Episode, and then I am on Twitter at Drew G Mackie, Mackie. I also my side project during quarantine was a new mini podcast about 80s music, but like 80s music you should have heard, but you didn't because you were living in the wrong country, or it's not one of the 30 80s songs that get played to death at like an 80s night. So it's called Deep Cuts and Superficial Wounds. deepcutsandsuperficialwounds.com. If you want to hear stuff that sounds like the 80s music you like, but you haven't heard yet, this is the podcast you may enjoy.
And if you want to harass me on Twitter, you can find me at I Write Wrongs, IWRITE Wrongs. And I found out this week that a movie that I wrote that came out in 2019 is now on Netflix in Canada. That's Being Frank, starring Jim Gaffigan. You can watch it in America and probably other countries if you want to pay for it.
Nice. And we will be on an episode of Gayest Episode Ever talking about an episode of Will and Grace. So you can also, if you want an episode to get into it with, then start there.
Yes, please.
Well, our website is gayishpodcast.com.
We are at Gayish Podcast on all social media like Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook.
Our hotline, you can send us text messages or leave us voicemails, is 5855-GAYISH. That's 585-542-9474. Standard rates apply.
Our email is gayishpodcast@gmail.com.
Our physical mailing address is Post Office Box 19882, Seattle, Washington, 98109.
Gayest and Straightest?
Yeah, let's do our Gayest and Straightest. I'm just going to go by the order that we're on this strippy thing of Zoom here. So that means me.
Great.
Haha. So the gayest thing about me this week is getting a negative COVID test and then immediately getting on Grindr to see if I could parlay that into anybody being willing to hook up.
Did it work?
It did not, because I'm too scared to hook up because of COVID.
That's the right answer.
Yeah.
I did like move the conversation forward a couple of times. You know, how you get on Grindr because you're bored and you're chatting with people and like, anyway. And then the straightest thing about me this week was talking with some listeners on our Discord voice chat about fantasy football.
Oh.
And trying to hang.
What do
in
you
that
know about
conversation.
fantasy football?
Not a fucking thing.
Okay,
But
I was gonna say.
I still chatted politely. Somebody said that they didn't know what it meant that their team was so many games back. Like what games back? That means like how many games they would have to win to win the thing. Anyway,
You just took logical like guesses based on context.
Yeah,
I can
exactly.
do that. That's how I manage most straight conversations.
yeah, same girl. Okay, Kyle, you're next.
The gayest thing about me this week, I have 4 pillows, 2 of which I use to kind of like create a like body pillow kind of thing to cuddle at night. So cuddling a man that is not there. And the straightest thing is that my bed, I never make my bed. Again, gays are supposed to be like clean and neat and everything. And I never make my bed. So shit's always all over the place. And so I have to pick up those 2 pillows from the ground every time so I can cuddle them right.
Did you name the pillows? Do the pillows have a name?
Oh, no. But now I'll have to think of one because you're right. Toddson.
Oh God,
Toddson. Okay.
Son of Todd.
Glenn, you are next.
Oh, good. The gayest thing I did this week was binge 5 seasons of The Good Wife. I had a lot of concept art to draw, and so I could just have that on in the background. And so now I know a lot about law in Illinois and Kalinda.
Nice.
Oh, and the gayest thing I did, that was my gayest. So my straightest thing I did this week was I checked out of politics. Starting with like Thanksgiving weekend, I just didn't check Twitter as much. I'm not as angry at random people whose names I should not know. And I'll check back in soon, to help out with Georgia and all that. But yeah, I just totally didn't care and pretended like my life was not in constant danger.
How did that feel?
It was actually kind of great. Like, I went from listening to like 2, 3, 4, 8 political podcasts a day to none. So it was nice.
That is in fact very straight of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the number of straight people that don't realize that not caring about politics, they get to do that because of privilege is staggering.
Yeah. So this week I embraced my privilege.
Yay.
Good for you.
Hooray. Drew, how about you? Bring us home.
The straightest thing I did this week is also possibly fairly gay because I haven't been to a gym since April, and I miss pecs. And I invested in a bench press set for home. So that is simultaneously a very straight guy thing to do, but also a very gay guy thing to do. So I don't really know how to answer that one.
Wait,
you
you miss having or seeing pecs?
Both.
Okay.
I mean, you can do a straight thing for gay reasons.
If the only pecs I can see in person are my own, I guess I will have to take that until the whole period is over. Yeah. The gayest thing I did happened last night while Glen finished Dungeons and Dragons thing very late, and he came in to watch a half-hour thing. We chose the new Animaniacs, and there is a bit they do a riff on the Odyssey, and Odysseus is drawn to have visible pubes. And I was floored by this to the point that while we were watching it on the TV, I pulled it up on my computer and took a screen grab of it and shared it on Twitter because everyone needed to see that Animaniacs gave Odysseus pubes. I was very excited by this.
I can't believe that either.
Yeah.
That's insane.
People were like, I think it's a happy trail. I was like, no, it's like a visible bush at the top of his pants and also below his pants. I mean, by pants, I mean like Greek soldier skirt thing. Huh. Yeah.
Wow. Impressive. Well, that's it. A quick programming note. We are going to have a live stream. We're calling it the Gayish New Year's Cock and Eve. It's going to be at 2 p.m. Pacific on New Year's Eve so that we can do a countdown to midnight for all of our awesome listeners in the United Kingdom and the GMT time zone. Also on our website at gayishpodcast.com/merch, we have new Gayish underwear and a Christmas sweatshirt that says Don We Now Are Gayish Apparel. Thanks to fucking Dan and our Discord users for suggesting those as ideas.
Yeah, and the merch store is updated, so a little bit easier to use it. But it's still at gayishpodcast.com/merch, but it'll take you to a nice, neat, new, pretty store.
Special thank you to Drew Mackie and Glen Lakin from Gayest Episode Ever. Thank you so much for being here, you guys.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you to our super gap bridgers, Cian Hazen Scanders, and our new super gap bridger now on the list, Jerome York. Thanks, Jerome. You're
Jerome.
in good company with two good of our friends.
So from the Cian Hazen studio, this has been Gayish. I'm Mike Johnson.
I'm Kyle Getz. Until next week, be butch, be fabulous, be you.
See you next week.